UNLV Microcertificate Economics. Okay, where we are is we want to talk about the theories behind some of this. The first one of those is classical theory, but let's start by looking at the big picture here. Why do things happen? Why? GDP, real GDP in particular, is not a constant. It doesn't go up or down. It goes up, it goes down, it goes sideways, it goes. Why? Unemployment goes up, goes down, goes down, goes up. The gray bar here is a recession. Unemployment goes way up in the recession and then starts a long, slow downward trend through Obama, through Trump, till we get to the pandemic and then boom. Why? Inflation's not constant. This is the inflation rate. We see an inflation rate now that we haven't seen since the 80s. Been a lot lower, but still bouncy ever since. Why? There are two basic strains of ideas in macroeconomics. There are more than these, but for our purposes, there are two. Idea number one we call classical, which just means it's old. It comes from Adam Smith, who we've met before, and his followers. The second big theoretical path out there is called Keynesian, and it comes from the followers of a man named John Maynard Keynes, who we bumped into before. So we need to talk about these two and talk about what it means. We're going to start now by just looking at classical economics, and then the next video we'll look at Keynesian, and then we'll try to put it all together. So we have Adam Smith. We know about Adam Smith. Believes in free markets, believes in individual choice, in self-interests, in government staying away from things. We have Thomas Malthus, who we'll talk about in a minute, who's kind of the next in line, late 1700s. Early 1800s, we have Malthus's best friend, David Ricardo. Malthus and Ricardo disagree about a lot. So just like, the founding fathers, people talk about the founding fathers thought. The founding fathers didn't agree on squat. Well, Smith's followers don't all agree on everything. There's a general theme to what they believe in, but Malthus and Ricardo are going to disagree on lots of stuff. We're going to try to give you the straw man picture of all of this. And then Alfred Marshall, you notice he's a photograph, not a drawing. That he really starts to kind of take over economics in the late 1800s, he and a few other people, and they change economics from a verbal kind of science into a mathematical science. They add math to it, and they bring in this concept of marginal, like marginal utility and marginal benefit. But this is all the stream that comes from Adam Smith. Now, we need to define some terms, and the first one we need to find is nominal. Nominal means the money of value things. So if I get paid $20 an hour, that's my nominal wage. If I'm paying 5% interest, that's the nominal interest rate. The actual cash dollar value that comes out of my pocket, that's nominal. Nominal. So nominal could be $10 an hour, 4% mortgage. Now the classicals are going to tell us that nominal isn't what we need to pay attention to. And in fact, they don't believe that people actually pay attention to nominal. What they believe is the gallon of gas is important, not the dollars you paid for it. Okay? So think about this. Classical economists say that we all should and do think about the world this way. If my wage is $10 an hour and gas is $5 a gallon, I actually get paid 2 gallons of gas an hour. That we should not and do not think about life in terms of $5 for this or $8 for this, but this thing costs me 2 hours work. Going to the movies costs me 4 hours work. Whatever it is, We think about what we produce in terms of how many hours it took me of work to get that thing, right? Not its price in dollars, its price in actual things. All right? So we get what we call the classical dichotomy. Dichotomy means a separation into two, right? There's a classical dichotomy. What matters is not the nominal. What matters is the real. Those two things are separate. The real value and the nominal value are separate things. What's that mean? Let's suppose that for some reason prices go down and tomorrow prices get cut in half. Well, if your boss comes to you at that point and goes, hey, we got to cut your salary in half. We got to cut your pay in half. All prices fell in half. We got to cut your pay in half. You would go, okay, because you know that doesn't make you any worse off. The value of what you get paid to you is in the real value. So you're smart enough to know if prices go up 10% and your salary goes up 5%, you're actually worse off. And you're smart enough to know if prices go down 10% and your salary goes down 5%, you're actually better off. Okay? They believe that we know and we act this way and we understand. Okay? They also use this word natural. Market outcomes are natural, and it's part of a whole, natural philosophy, natural order, natural rights. They believed that the way the world worked was natural. There was a natural thing to it, that the universe is natural. Okay? We use the word equilibrium the way Adam Smith would use the word natural. There's not a natural price, there's an equilibrium price. We get markets, and those markets go into equilibrium. And that is a good thing. So, Adam Smith and his buddies here, free choice creates optimal outcomes. If we let things work and we don't get in the way, we let people and businesses and the universe all work on its own, we will get the best outcomes. You'll hear modern classical economists, and there are lots of them, and we'll talk about this eventually in another video, use phrases like the discipline of the market. So when one party says we got to bail out these banks, other people will say, no, we need to let them fail. We need to let them suffer the discipline of the market. Okay? Free choice. A market creates the best outcomes in the classical world. So there's another guy. This is a Monty Python movie, kind of. All these other guys we're talking about are British, but there's this one French guy taunting them in the middle of the movie. His name is Jean-Baptiste Say, and he came up with what we call Say's Law. Now, when you go to grad school in econ, you'll learn there are like 8 different versions of Say's Law, and the whole thing is kind of a mess, but let's just take it in its simplest form in my version of it. And all it says is production creates income. The people who build the cars for General Motors get paid for building the cars. They don't have to wait until the car sells. They get paid when they make the car. That means by the time that car hits the showroom, people have income and they can go buy it. Production creates income. Everything that is produced can potentially be purchased because everybody has income from work. Okay, there's lots of Say quotes about what we're paying for something is in our production, right? Real value. We're putting in real hours of work, and that creates the ability for us to buy real goods and services in the marketplace. Okay? There's never too much stuff out there, right? There is never a surplus of goods. There's always the income necessary to buy them. Okay? Then we saw this guy, Malthus. Malthus's contribution to that is the theory. He wrote a book called The Theory of Population, late 1700s. And what it says is that not only is there always going to be competition among businesses from the Adam Smith side, but there's always going to be lots and lots of workers. Now, you can Read this book. It's kind of depressing, and again, every 20 years somebody writes a new book that says exactly what Malthus said, and eventually one of them will be true. But what it says is there's always going to be so many workers. The workers are in competition with each other. Okay? Now, Malthus has all kinds of bad ideas of what's going to happen because of this, but taking that aside, classical economics says workers are just the same as business people. They have to do good work to get paid. The better work they do, the more they'll get paid. The same things that apply to businesses about the invisible hand and working hard and all that, that's going to apply to workers because there's always lots and lots of workers competing for jobs. Now, let's put all of this stuff together and kind of build this theory out. 1, we have competition. Competition among businesses, competition among workers. Competition, in a sense, among consumers. We have freedom. Consumers can choose what to buy. Businesses can choose what to produce and what price to charge and who to hire. Workers have freedom to take a job, not take a job. We have Say's law that says it's impossible for us to have more stuff than there is income to buy it. We can always buy everything. And we have this belief that the real value of things matters, not the price. I don't care whether gas is $3 a gallon or $6 a gallon. I care about how much of my income, how much of my work effort goes into buying gas. Okay? What does this mean? It means, 1, wages and prices are going to be flexible. If you won't work at this job for a certain wage, if I say, look, the wage at this job is $8 an hour, and you go, hey, no. Somebody out there is going to take it for $8 an hour. There's always competition. Wages and prices are flexible up and down. They never sit in the same place. It's like all wages and prices are like stock prices, right? They go up and down from day to day if they have to. And, of course, income exists to do all this purchasing. What does this mean to us? It means the economy is going to fix itself. It's going to be self-correcting, and it's going to be stable. If we leave it alone. If we let wages and prices move, they're always going to be in equilibrium. Supply and demand is going to find that natural solution to the economy. Right? We're not going to have bad things happen for more than very short periods of time because things are going to fix themselves as long as we maintain competition and freedom and, don't get in the way. So, recessions. What happens if a recession kind of starts? Well, wages and prices fall until we get back to equilibrium, right? If you're a business person, nobody's buying your stuff, you cut prices. If your business is struggling, you have to cut the wages. You cut the wages and prices, you get back to equilibrium. And by definition, in the classical world, equilibrium is a good thing. What happens if we have inflation? Well, in the classical world, remember, the prices of things don't matter. Inflation is a nominal thing, not a real thing. Just because the price of gas goes up doesn't mean a gallon of gas is not a gallon of gas. It is. Inflation is a nominal thing. And the only way you get inflation, according to the classical view, is if the government has printed up too much money, and the way to get rid of inflation is for the government to stop printing up so much money. And again, you've kind of heard that theory before, and we'll talk about it again. So what's the classical view of life? Well, the classical view of life is the short run. The immediate situation is always going to take care of itself. The government doesn't need to be fiddling day to day with what's going on in the economy. Economics and economists should focus on the long run. Right? Adam Smith's book is called The Wealth of Nations. And it's really about how do we make England richer over 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. It's not about fixing somebody's problem today, because those things will take care of themselves. It breathes a philosophy called laissez-faire. It's a French term. It doesn't come from Say, by the way, but it's a French term that just means kind of hands off, let it be. Okay? So the short-run philosophy of classical economics is leave things alone. The long-run philosophy is to make sure that things are going to be good over 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. Well, Houston, we have a problem, yes? For 150 years, this is the economic theory. Karl Marx is a classical economist. His basic fundamental philosophy is classical economics. Okay, they're little splinter things, but classical economics rules the world. But then in the early 1900s, we have a financial crash in 1907. We have another one in 1929 that leads to the Great Depression. The Great Depression does not fix itself. And their classical economists are arguing, well, wages and prices didn't fall. Enough! Even though they'd already fallen by a third. Wages and prices fall by a third. It doesn't help. Okay? So, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix this problem? And the answer is we're going to start out by coming up with a brand new theory.